everyone.
Hello.
We're really excited to have you back with us today. Thanks for joining us. Today, we're going to be talking about claiming the title of musician. So, I don't know about you, Ashley, but I have wrestled with this question a lot of my life, and I'm excited to dig into it with you today. I have talked to so many musicians who have been playing for their entire life, and they do not claim the title of musician. And I find this to be very interesting and intriguing. And so we're excited to have the conversation today and hear from all of you as well, because that's the whole reason we're doing this, is to start conversations and stay connected. So, without further ado, Ashley, may I ask, do you claim the title of musician, and how has that looked over the course of your career?
Sure. I think this is a really great question, and my mind is immediately going in a lot of different directions. Because so I am at a point right now where I do claim the title of musician, and I feel comfortable claiming that title at this point in my journey. I think I didn't always feel comfortable claiming that title, and it depends on the circumstances, like what variation of that title I claim. One of the things that I know you can commiserate on, Stephanie, is like when people ask you what you do for a living.
Yes.
It's such an interesting question to answer. I think regardless of what you do, it's probably an interesting question to answer. But I think especially when the answer is musician, I get a lot of different reactions. And so, depending on my mood and depending on how I'm feeling, I will kind of alter that title to be like musician, or like musician and content creator, or like musician and instructor, or teacher, or artist, or classical pianist, or whatever it is, like, and I'll claim variations of that title. But I do think that now I am comfortable claiming that title. I didn't used to be. And I think the word musician definitely has some stereotypes that go along with it, and some assumptions. And so that, I think, makes it a little bit complicated on both ends, right? Like on, whatever our own impression is, or whatever our own standards are of what it takes to be a musician. There's that journey that I think I had to get over in my earlier 20s of like, okay, like I have a degree in music now. Okay, now I have 2 degrees in music. Like, at what point am I a professional musician? And I think I just got old enough that now I'm like, no, yeah, I'm a musician. It's my job, and it has been my entire adult life. But when I say that to other people, I think because of the reactions I get, I always feel a little weird saying it, to be honest. Like, it brings up my own feelings of not being good enough. It brings up my own fear of people judging me, and of people, having their own idea about what that means. One of the common questions that I will get, maybe not as much anymore, this used to happen when I lived in a different city more often, but when I would say that I was a musician, and then people would say like, oh, right, but like, how do you make money?
Oh,
Which is hilarious. And
I
for
so
me, they're one
related.
and the same. Yeah, but just those like the follow-up questions, and the way that, like, when you say I'm a musician in a professional capacity, I think sometimes it does like break people's brain a little bit. And so that response, and the myriad of responses I've gotten, makes that a little bit complicated. So that's a long answer, but yes, I claim the title of musician. I think titles are interesting, and I like Brene Brown's slash idea, where she says like, you're never just one thing. You're not just one thing. Like, to say that I'm a musician feels overly simplistic, and I think that's the only issue that I have with it, is like when I'll often say it when I don't want to talk to someone more about it. I'll kind of use it like I'm a musician, because unless they are one of the rare people that has like a ton of follow-up questions, it's an easy way to like not have to go into further what that means. Because I like the slashes of like musician slash instructor slash performer slash content creator slash podcaster. I like that, and that feels more holistic and more true to who I am, and authentic, because I don't feel like it's the one thing that defines me. It's a big part of who I am, and it's a part of who I am, but it's not, the only thing that I identify with. So, how about you?
Exactly. Oh, yeah. Well, so many of the things that you said, I also feel. Titles are weird, and I started using the title musician because I felt like it encapsulated more of what I do than what I used to say
Yes.
I was, which was like, oh, at first I would say, oh, I'm a pianist. And then
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm a piano instructor. And I just didn't like how any of those landed, because they felt like every time you label yourself as something, then people have like this onslaught of like assumptions about you that don't necessarily translate to what you actually do. And
Mm-hmm.
so I felt like musician was like, okay, well, a musician is somebody who makes music and shares music, and it just feels a little bit more broad, which I liked. Um, for a long time, though, I felt like I had to claim a title of something that I directly was at that moment. And so, like you said earlier, it's like, yeah, trying to answer the question based off of the day, basically. So I really do appreciate like the slashes, right? Because I think that that's really what artists are. Like I feel like maybe, the big overarching theme is creativity and artistry, and then underneath that umbrella is musician, and then underneath musician is like pianist, vocalist, instructor, songwriter, guitarist, whatever it might be. And then
Mm-hmm.
underneath that sect, then it's like instructor, like coach, all these different things, like so, different variations. And I think that like if we can understand we're all belonging to the same like overarching theme of like creativity and artistry, and then kind of watching how you can trickle down in different ways, and maybe some days you're more of a pianist, and other days you're
Mm-hmm.
more of a vocalist, and other days you're more of a content creator, and other days you're more of a whatever, a pianist. But I think that just kind of letting it be a little bit more fluid, it has been really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And I also find it interesting. Yeah, I get a lot of follow up questions when I say I'm a musician. Like, oh, well, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean? And I just always try to like cram everything into one. What I found that I kind of have a hard time with is that, yeah, there are these expectations of what a musician is, right? And so I've gotten things like, wow, well, like, you're really making ends meet. Like, wow, you're such a, I've gotten the word scrapper, which I think is probably a good, it's a backwards compliment or backhanded compliment. But I
Yeah.
had this like really wealthy piano student like years ago, and I don't remember what he did, but he was taking lessons, and he was like, oh, like this, you're like a scrapper, you're like, but you're making it work like as a musician. And I was like, thank you. And also,
Yeah.
yes, I think that being scrappy is good, and I do think being an artist, you do have to be scrappy, but maybe not in the sense that it landed at the time. I don't know. I'll leave that.
Or a lot of other things like entrepreneurial and
Yeah, not just like
brave,
you're barely
yeah.
making ends meet. And the other thing I want
Yeah.
to say about that is just I think this is maybe is going off on a tangent, but I think that there is a stereotype of like the starving musician, or like the musician who like is always without or needs more
Yeah.
or is barely getting
The
by.
artist. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
just in general, like the artist, right? And I get that kind of feedback a lot. Like, how do you make it
Yes.
work?
Same.
And I'm like, I think that that's kind of a self-perpetuated cycle in a way. It's like what I found is, especially in the city that we live in. I mean, in many cities, it's like there's this saturation of artists, and so many artists are just playing around town for free or very little money. I recently got offered a 3-hour gig for $100, which is like no money, with a band. It wasn't just solo. It was like this, the expectation was to put this whole band together and play for 3 hours for $100 total.
And you would like
um,
split that cost with the band?
yes.
Or split
um,
that payment?
Yes, yes. And so I think it's interesting though, because like, there's all these sort of like self-perpetuating cycles within the title of musician that I think that we could do some work around, just like as a
Yeah.
community. That, being a musician means that you can have abundance in your life, and you can have money flowing, and you can do the things that you're passionate about, and like invite that financial stability into your life. So that it is tangential a little bit, but I just find it interesting. Like when you claim a title, then you claim all the stereotypes as well. And
Yeah,
that's one of them that
totally.
I'm like, I'd like to see a shift, right? Like we can
Yeah.
start not accepting low payment for our talents and our gifts, and start raising the bar a little bit. My other thing
Yeah.
that I've noticed is that, like, I've had people say that they teach but that they're not musicians. Like, oh, I'm a piano teacher but I'm not a musician, or I teach piano
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not a pianist. Like I've literally heard I teach voice but I'm not a vocalist. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
like claiming the title of what you do, it helps you step into the fullness of yourself. And so I like
Yeah.
this question because it makes us ask ourselves, do you claim the title of musician? But you could really replace musician with anything. Do you
Totally.
claim the
Yes.
title of, like, I don't know. Do you claim the title of being a vocalist? If you sing, you're a
Yeah.
vocalist. You claim the title of,
Totally.
right? Like, and I think that people are like, well, no,
Yes.
I'm not like, doing it professionally. And I was just listening to a podcast with Jacob Collier, and he said, I have a hard time admitting that I'm a professional musician because it puts so many stereotypes on you,
Right.
right? That like being a professional musician is like, what the hell does that even mean, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, if Jacob Collier is saying that, you know, I'm like, that's refreshing because I think it's like
Yeah.
it assumes that you've stopped learning, and I think that
Yeah.
that's like being an artist and a musician, you'll never stop learning, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yes, we are professional musicians, and obviously so is he, and there are so many out there, but it's just interesting what titles do. So I'm
Yeah.
excited that we like had this conversation, you know, because yeah, it makes you second guess what you title yourself as.
Yeah, well, and I think on the point that you're kind of making now, I think everybody has their own journey of like accepting the title or not accepting the title. But then I also encounter people that are learning how to play music who won't claim it because they don't think it's like something that they're good enough at. And that's an interesting one because I am totally guilty of that. Like people will ask me if I sing all the time if they don't know me. And I'm like, well, yeah, I sing all the time. Like it's kind of part of my job. And sometimes I do it for fun, but like I'm definitely not a vocalist. And I totally do that. And I do it with running too. Like I run many times a week, but I would never like, I don't identify as a runner because I'm not like running, I don't know, in a way that seems like I can claim that title. So I get it and I'm working
It's
on it.
not
And I think it's
funny.
something that yeah, it's funny, and I think I know I've had to help students work through that, and it's a conversation that comes up. Stephanie, I know we've had it in people in our classes and in our memberships and stuff like that of just like people that are playing the piano, people that are getting good at piano, people that have been putting in the time, putting in the energy, but don't want to call themselves musicians. And I think at the end of the day, in a simplistic way, if we can get rid of all of the baggage that comes with the word, which each person is going to bring like their own idea of what it means. If you play music, if you create music, if you make music, you're a musician. You know, if you use your voice, you're an artist. I think that's true. I think like everybody's an artist. Anybody can be a musician if you've ever sang, if you've ever played the piano. And really, that's all it is. That's all it is, right? Is just musician is someone that makes music, and we all do that in our own way, shape, or form, even if we're consciously doing it or not.
Yeah, totally. And I think like
Yeah,
having some training, like that always helps, but that's not like the fundamental of creativity. Like
no,
creativity is in all of us and it can manifest in a lot of different ways. And maybe it's music, maybe it's art, like painting, maybe it's writing, poetry. But I think that just like asking yourself the question, like, how does my creativity want to manifest? And then allowing yourself to like try some different things out and being okay with the fact that maybe your sounds don't sound like what you're used to, but like letting that be okay, you know, like
yeah,
the sounds you're creating are like unique to you and maybe they're like unpolished or whatever, but like that's beautiful. Like that's like a
yeah,
that's a cool sound that you can capture. And I know a lot of people might disagree with that statement, but I think that there is something to offer at every stage of learning, and every type of artistry has something different to offer. So it's cool to kind of try to like blast those boxes of like what is and isn't acceptable as a musician and an artist, and just say, you know what, I think you can find artistry and musicianship in everything you do.
yeah, totally. I love it. I encourage all the listeners to play around with claiming the title if you don't, and or at least ask yourself the questions like why don't you, why do you, what does it mean to you, and see if you can sift through some of that. Because as you can hear when Stephanie and I talk about it, it's not simple, and it's not like one day we just woke up and we're like, yeah, I'm a musician. It's a journey. You have to sort through all the stuff, but yeah, I think it's worth exploring for sure because it can lead us to question other titles and to question, if we want to claim them, if we don't want to claim them, what else do we want to add to our slash? Because I think at this point, it's not a simple thing. I don't like to ask people what they do. I will usually ask them like, how do you spend your time? And then that allows for a little more of that slash answer, which I think is more holistic for everyone. So,
Exactly.
yeah, and those of you listening, we also just started making. We have. I don't know that we've talked about this on the podcast, but we have a membership that is pretty awesome, where you can learn how to play the piano and join our Facebook group and get in touch with us and kind of get help with your musical journey. And we just made the first class of Intro to Piano 1, which starts at the very beginning level, available for free on our website. And so in the show notes, you can find a link to that if you want to go download that class and get access to that. And, maybe learn some things and then share with us how it's going and what you think about it. We would love to hear from you.
We would love to hear from you. Yeah. And we're really excited about this membership and think that it's just everything that we talk about on this podcast is what the membership is foundationally about. And so we're all about helping you connect to what musicianship and artistry means to you. And we believe, like we said, that everybody has something to offer, and we would love to, be a part of your journey. So if you're looking to keep that journey going, please consider checking us out, because we would love to get to know you a little.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us. We will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.
We are so grateful for you. Thank you for spending your time with us today.
Our podcast is inspired by people like you.
If you're looking to dig deep and discover your authentic artist, then join us today by visiting our website, connectionexperiment.com.